Welcome to Quick Speak, the English podcast.
Hello, everyone.
Today we're looking into something many people think about: the value of a university degree. Is it still as important as it used to be?
That's the big question, isn't it? We'll explore how the idea of a degree has changed over time.
Right. We want to look at the past, understand the situation now, and maybe think a little about the future.
And the goal is to help you understand this topic better and maybe learn some useful English words and phrases along the way.
Exactly. We'll explore different viewpoints on university education and what paths might lead to success today. So, where should we start? Maybe with the history.
Good idea. Historically, university wasn't for everyone. Far from it.
Like way back.
Yeah, think medieval times. It was mainly for the clergy, church people and the nobility, the rich families, very exclusive.
So not about getting a job back then.
Not really in the modern sense. Then things started to shift with new ideas emerging, more focus on science and research. Universities began to change.
And then the Industrial Revolution happened. That must have been a huge change.
Absolutely massive. Suddenly, industries needed skilled people, engineers, technicians.
So technical schools started appearing.
Exactly. And getting a diploma from one of those places, well, it became a sign that you had real practical skills that were needed. It meant something important for work.
Okay, so it became more practical. What about the 20th century?
Well, that's when mass education really took off. Universities opened up to many, many more people.
Right.
And having a degree became seen as, the main way to improve your life, get a good, stable job, maybe in an office, administration, management, that sort of thing.
The standard path. Almost expected.
Pretty much. And then around the turn of this century with globalization and the knowledge economy, it felt even more essential. Specific knowledge, advanced skills, a degree seemed key.
But challenges started appearing even before that.
Yeah. Interestingly, back in the 1990s, the internet started booming. And that planted the seeds for online learning, offering different ways to get information outside of universities. A quiet beginning, but important.
Okay, that sets the scene. From exclusive club to standard path, then the first hints of disruption. Now, let's talk money, the economic argument. Does a degree still mean higher pay?
Well, the data generally says yes. Studies in many developed countries, OECD countries, show graduates often earn significantly more than people who only finished secondary school.
How much more are we talking?
It varies, but often in the range of 30 to 50% higher earnings. In Poland, for example, someone with a master's might earn about 40% more.
And in the U.S.?
The difference can be quite large, maybe over $25,000 a year on average. So yeah, that definitely supports the idea that a degree boosts your earning potential.
Those are big numbers. Hard to argue with that initially.
But, and this is a big but, it's not the whole story. We have to talk about the cost.
Right, university isn't free, even when tuition is low or zero.
Exactly. There are tuition fees in many places, living costs, books, materials. It all adds up. And that often means student debt.
The U.S. student debt situation comes up a lot.
It does. The average graduate there leaves with something like $30,000 in loans. That's a heavy weight to start your career with.
And even in places like Poland, where public universities don't charge tuition for citizens, there are still costs.
Oh, absolutely. Living costs, especially in cities, are rising. Rent, food, transport, plus books and other things. So many students end up working while they study.
Which can make studying harder or take longer.
Right. So this idea of, is it worth it financially?
Right.
It's complicated. It's not a simple yes or no.
It depends on a lot of factors.
Exactly. Like, what subject did you study? How good was the university? What's the job market like for that field?
Some degrees probably pay off more easily than others.
Definitely. Medicine, law, they often have very high financial returns. But some other fields might mean lower starting salaries, even though you have the degree.
And how does the knowledge economy fit in? Does it always favor degrees?
Well, fields like computer science fit well. But for creative jobs or starting your own business, maybe practical skills and a portfolio, examples of your work, might count for more than the piece of paper itself.
That leads us nicely into alternative ways of learning. It feels like there are so many options now besides traditional university.
There really are, especially over the last 10 years or so. Non-traditional learning has exploded.
What kind of things are we talking about?
Things like online courses from big platforms, Coursera, ADX, also coding boot camps, training in digital marketing, specialized workshops.
And these offer certificates, right? Are employers actually accepting them?
Increasingly, yes, especially in the tech industry. They often provide specific skills employers need right now. One statistic suggested around 30% of U.S. tech companies in 2023 were open to hiring people without a degree if they had the right certificates or projects.
30%, that's quite significant. Tell me more about these boot camps.
They're usually very intensive short-term programs, focused on getting you job-ready skills quickly, like data science or web development in just a few months.
Faster than a four-year degree, for sure.
Much faster. And graduates from good boot camps can often get jobs with decent starting salaries, sometimes similar to university grads in those fields.
But there must be questions about them, too.
Oh, definitely. Quality can vary a lot. How does an employer really know how good a particular boot camp or online course is? There isn't the same kind of universal standard or accreditation as universities have.
And you also mentioned microlearning, like learning in small bits.
Yeah, platforms that let you learn specific skills in small chunks, continuously, great for keeping up to date, but again, proving the value or credibility of those little bits of learning can be a challenge.
So, lots of new options, but also questions about quality and recognition. This seems linked to how companies are hiring now. Are they focusing more on skills?
It seems that way. Many companies are looking more closely at practical skills, what software you can use, can you actually solve problems they have?
Less focus just on the degree certificate itself.
In many areas, yes. There was a LinkedIn survey mentioned, I think, from 2024, where over half, 56% of HR managers said they preferred candidates who could show examples of their work, like a portfolio, over those who only had a degree.
Wow, 56%. That really shows a shift.
It does. And it means recruitment is changing too. More practical tests, projects as part of the interview process. The formal degree becomes maybe one piece of the puzzle, not the whole picture.
Though we should be clear, for some jobs, a degree is still absolutely essential, right? By law, even.
Absolutely. Think doctors, lawyers, certain types of engineers. These professions have legal requirements for specific degrees and licenses. That's not likely to change.
But even in those fields, are new ways of learning creeping in?
Yes, even there. Things like using virtual reality simulators for training or programs where students learn both at university and inside a company, getting real work experience alongside their studies. So blending tradition with new methods.
It sounds like technology is a huge driver in all this.
Yeah.
Not just creating alternatives, but changing everything.
It really is. The internet gives almost anyone access to vast amounts of knowledge. Platforms like Coursera, EDX, Khan Academy, they offer university-level content, often for free or low cost.
So the knowledge isn't locked away in universities anymore.
Not in the same way. People can learn so much online now. In Poland, for instance, the number of people taking online courses apparently shot up by something like 300% between 2020 and 2024.
300%. That's massive growth. How does that challenge universities?
Well, it forces them to ask, what's our unique value? If you can learn the material online, why come to a physical university? Is it the structure, the community, the official qualification, the labs?
And online learning itself is getting better, right? More than just watching videos.
Definitely. You now have virtual labs, simulations, online tools for group work, remote mentoring. It's becoming much more interactive and practical.
But there are still challenges with online learning.
Sure. Less face-to-face contact, you need a lot of self-discipline, and sometimes questions remain about how valuable an online certificate is compared to a traditional degree, depending on the field and employer.
And what about artificial intelligence, AI? How might that change things?
AI could be a huge factor. It has the potential to personalize learning, completely adapting to each person's speed and style.
Making learning much more efficient.
Potentially, yes. And it might change how we prove skills. Instead of just a degree, maybe AI helps assess what you can actually do through simulations or practical tasks. Proof of ability, not just proof of attendance.
So universities might face competition from faster, more personalized tech-based learning.
That's a real possibility. The role might shift more towards guiding learning, providing mentorship, maybe becoming centers that verify and certify skills learned in many different ways, not just teaching everything themselves.
Okay, moving beyond the practical and economic.
Yep.
What about the social side? Does having a degree still affect your social standing?
Oh, absolutely. In many places, and Poland was mentioned as an example, having a degree is still linked to social status. It can feel like joining a higher social group.
Which can create pressure for people.
Yes, a lot of pressure. If your friends are all going to university, you might feel left out or, somehow less worthy if you don't. There can be a lingering stereotype, especially among older people, that you're somehow inferior without higher education.
So some people might get a degree just for that social acceptance.
It can definitely be a factor, but we also see counterexamples, right? Famous, successful people who dropped out of college.
True. And even locally, stories of entrepreneurs who succeeded without finishing university.
Exactly. Those stories challenge the old stereotypes. And the conversation is shifting too. People talk more now about future skills, which aren't always tied to a traditional degree.
There's also that feeling, sometimes even for people with degrees, that they don't really use what they learned. Imposter syndrome.
Yes, that comes up too. Feeling like the formal education didn't perfectly prepare you for the real world of work. It all suggests society's idea of a successful person is becoming broader, including different kinds of paths.
We've talked a lot about Europe and the US, but the value of a degree isn't the same everywhere in the world, is it?
Not at all. That's a really important point. In some parts of the world and developing countries, just getting into higher education is incredibly difficult. Access is the main issue.
And even if you get a degree there, it doesn't always lead to a good job.
Unfortunately, no. In some places, like India was mentioned, there might be many graduates competing for few suitable jobs. This leads to underemployment, people working in jobs below their skill level or feeling they need to move abroad.
That sounds very different from, say, East Asia.
Very different. In places like South Korea, Japan, or China, getting a degree from a top university is still seen as extremely important, almost guaranteeing a good career with a major company. The competition to get into those universities is intense. Think of the Gaokao exams in China.
So, for someone listening, perhaps in Poland or elsewhere, it's useful to know that this whole degree or no future idea is viewed very differently around the globe.
Absolutely. Some regions value skills and experience more directly. Others still place enormous weight on the formal diploma. Understanding these differences is key if you're thinking about international careers or moving.
Let's touch on the more personal side again. What are the psychological effects of not having a degree, especially when maybe your friends do?
It can be tough. We mentioned feelings of isolation or being less important socially. There's this thing called social comparison. Seeing your peers achieve academic milestones can make you feel inadequate if you're on a different path.
That sounds difficult.
It can be, but there's a positive side too. Many people who choose alternative careers, skilled trades, creative work, starting a business, often report feeling really satisfied, more in control of their lives.
The self-made types.
Right. They often have strong motivation, belief in themselves, maybe good mentors or support groups. These psychological factors are really important for success outside the traditional system.
But does society sometimes still look down on people without degrees? Stigma.
Yes, unfortunately, that can still happen. Unfair judgments like someone must be lazy or not smart enough. This can affect job hunting and even mental health, causing anxiety or low self-esteem.
So support systems and building confidence are crucial.
Definitely. Helping people develop not just job skills, but also soft skills like communication and self-belief is vital so they can navigate these biases and feel valued. It shows the decision about university has deep personal impacts, not just financial ones.
Okay, let's look ahead now. What are the big future trends that will shape the value of degrees? Automation comes up a lot.
Yes, automation and AI taking over repetitive tasks is a major one. This could hit jobs that don't require advanced skills harder, potentially making things tougher for those without higher education or specialized training unless they adapt.
But new jobs will also be created.
That's the hope and expectation. Jobs needing skills like data analysis, creative thinking, managing AI systems, complex problem solving. Things machines aren't good at.
So even if you have a degree, you can't just stop learning.
Absolutely not. That's the other huge trend. Lifelong learning. A degree might give you a good start, a foundation, but knowledge becomes outdated so fast now, you'll need to keep learning, maybe getting new certificates, upskilling throughout your career.
How do universities fit into this future? They need to change too, presumably.
They really do. They need to be more flexible, maybe offer shorter courses, work much more closely with industries, integrate research with real-world problems.
Perhaps become less focused on just delivering lectures for 4 years.
Exactly. Maybe more hybrid models, online learning combined with local centers for practical work or mentoring. Or, as we touched on, maybe they become key places for certifying skills, verifying what people have learned through many different routes.
And what does this mean for people who choose not to get a traditional degree?
It could mean more opportunities to learn valuable skills in smaller, more manageable, maybe cheaper steps. You don't necessarily need the huge commitment of a multi-year degree up front to get started or to keep advancing.
So flexibility and adaptability seem to be the key words for the future, for both education and careers.
Precisely. And that's why these non-traditional learning paths are becoming so much more attractive and relevant.
We've covered so much today. We looked at how the idea of a university degree has really changed over time.
From being just for a tiny elite to the standard path, and now, well, it's more complicated.
We talked about the money, yes. Graduates often earn more, but the costs and debt are serious factors.
And the rise of all these alternatives, online courses, boot camps, offering different ways to gain skills.
Plus, how employers are starting to look more at practical skills and actual work examples, not just the degree.
Though some jobs, like medicine or law, still absolutely require that formal qualification.
We touched on technology making knowledge widely available, and how AI might personalize learning in the future.
And the social side, the status, the pressure, but also how stereotypes are slowly changing.
And that the picture looks very different depending on where you are in the world.
Right. And finally, thinking about the future with automation and the huge need for continuous lifelong learning.
So is a degree necessary? It's clear there's no single answer. It really depends on you, your goals, your field, where you live.
It's a very personal calculation now.
Definitely gives us all food for thought. Here's maybe one final thing to consider. In this rapidly changing world, what's ultimately more valuable? Is it the specific knowledge you might get from a university program? Or is it developing the ability to keep learning new things, adapting throughout your life?
That's a really powerful question to end on.
We hope exploring these ideas today has been helpful and interesting for you, and perhaps helped with your English practice too.
If you want to learn more English related to this topic, remember to check out our website. You can find things like vocabulary lists and exercises from today's discussion in the description.
And please subscribe to Quick Speak, the English podcast, so you don't miss future episodes. Thanks for listening.